All right. Hello, everyone. Going live a little bit early. I hit the button. We're live. All right. This week we're going to do some new content, but just, for a little continuity, I'm actually in this project kind of already. Let me bring up Laravel additions. So I'll just bring this up. The last few times I've streamed, we were working on this. So just for a little continuity for the regulars, thank you for continuing to watch. But if you did see one of those in the recent weeks, this has been merged and tagged. So this was basically the kind of smarter migrations, an improved migration guesser to generate you, a fuller migration kind of based on this name you're already giving it. So basically, in addition to what Laravel does, which is kind of the create, it'll get a create one pretty good. But now it supports like dropping tables, renaming tables, dropping columns, renaming columns, changing columns, adding columns. Any of these conventions in your naming, and it'll attempt to give you a more complete migration beyond just the schema closure. It'll actually, in the case of drop table, it'll say schema drop table if exists, table name, and pluck it all out of the name. So again, just passing this name that you're already doing, it gives you even more. So I think that's kind of nice. I've wanted this for a while. Like I said, all of these Laravel additions I've attempted to put into core before. Some were liked, but just not merged. This one was actually kind of like one of my first PRs ever, way back in like Laravel 5.5 or something. You can find it. Anyway, this is merged. All that work from the last 3 live streams merged, ready to go. Composer update on your Laravel additions package, and you'll be able to generate migrations faster, hopefully. So today I wanted to work on 2 paper cuts, and let me lay a little foundation here. Something I've noticed, there's just a couple rough edges when I jump into a new project, and it's interesting because 2 things we'll see here in a second. First, it's interesting because Taylor actually had a pretty good tweet in the last week about this. I think as a larger team, he too now is jumping into projects that maybe he hasn't set up on his machine. Like 10 years ago, it was just Taylor working on Laravel. Everything was his, didn't have to share a project. Once you start sharing a project, some documentation around the setup, and there's nuance to all the different projects, especially if they're front-end heavy, whatever. But strictly for Laravel, and this is kind of the other thing that's interesting, Taylor, I have this command that I got from Taylor. I think he had this on Laracon stage, and he just runs MFS. And this is basically migrate fresh seed. All right, so let's just do this again. PHP artisan migrate fresh -- seed. That's what MFS is, migrate fresh seed. All right, and again, this was taken from Taylor, which is kind of funny because when I jump into a project similar to his other tweet, I typically just run MFS. And what I've met with is this, right? I met with this. This is a terrible DX. This happens all the time. It's a brand new project. I just cloned it down. I just run MFS because it's muscle memory. The correct command you're supposed to run is PHP artisan migrate, okay? Fresh technically drops what's there and brings something up. So technically, it's not the right command. So the very first time you're in a project, you need to run PHP artisan migrate. And if you do, you're presented with this nice little helper prompt that says, the SQL database configuration doesn't exist. Do you want me to make it? And then it proceeds to run migrate. Now, why the hell doesn't migrate fresh just do this too? Okay. If you're running migrate fresh just from muscle memory, or you have the alias MFS, it should just do this. It should just prompt you to do this too, right? I mean, because then you're making a fresh database. It's just super fresh because it doesn't even exist. So I want to dig into core. I want to get this for the migrate command and just see how easy it is to throw it in migrate fresh, because I feel like it should have that as well. Because worst case scenario, you haven't made it and you just dump out here and say no, but it's way better. Saying no here, this warning, is way better than database with file path, blah, 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 PHP error, crap. Terrible DX. Anyway, Laravel's got awesome DX. So that just, to me, that doesn't fit. It's a paper cut. It's a tiny thing. Tiny thing, paper cut. It doesn't fit the beauty and the smoothness of even just that sibling command of migrate. So let's go make it happen. Now, as I have done in a lot of these past streams, basically I just kind of jump into the vendor folder and kind of hack around. We're just spiking right now. I'll make this an official PR into Laravel once we've kind of proven it can work. So right now, I'm just going to dig around in the vendor folder to find this, migrate command. And I'm assuming that they probably, I've seen this as I've worked on other commands. It's probably just right here, right? So confirm to proceed, application in production. Are you sure you want to run this command? Okay, so that one's fine, confirmable trait. Let's see if they have like try run migrations. So using connection, option, database, function, prepare database. Okay, preparing database. If repository doesn't exist, is this the same command? Yeah, it's migrate. So run the database migration, confirm to proceed. Now this seems to be strictly production. Are you sure you want to run this command? So maybe the easiest thing to do would be to copy. Let's copy this, would you like to create it? And just see where that exists here. That might be the faster thing to do. So let me just jump in console. Let's see if this magically is available. Am I looking in the wrong spot? Okay, so maybe it's not there. Let's back up a little bit to source. Would you like to create it? Here we go, migrate command. All right. So it is in here. After prompting for missing arguments. Oh, that's mail make. Whoops. Let's go back. Would you like to create it? I thought, what is this? Console migration. Did I not click that? Would you like to create it? Okay, migrate command. Create missing SQLite database. Where does this live? Oh, I don't have completion because we're not. I wish sometimes they would complete. I wish PHP Storm would be a little more lenient in the vendor folder. Like it clearly graphs everything. I get kind of probably from a memory efficiency perspective why they don't, but if they're going to spend 2 minutes indexing my project, I should be able to command click around the vendor folder. Anyway, yeah, see I do B here and it's no usage is found, but it's clearly in the freaking class. Here it is right here. Okay. So we have repository exist, retry 2 times, migrate a repository exists, then try running handle missing database. So repository exists. Okay, so this happens up here in prepare database. Okay. So, sorry, I'm hungry. Okay, so prepare the database. So if this repository exists, if it doesn't exist, then we're going to say preparing the database, run, call silent, migrate, install, array filter database with the option. Okay. Prepare database. So where does this get called? I think this got called higher up. Okay, so run migrations. They're using the connection based on what you say in the database. So yeah, let's see here. Prepare database. Next, we'll check to see if the path option has been defined. Pretend, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. This calls prepare database. Maybe because you only... Adrian, what's going on in chat? Yeah, sorry, for clarity, you can control click, but I can't use any of the additional navigation. So for example, something I use a lot is Command B to find the instances of where this is called, or be able to go back to where it was called. It doesn't allow me to do that in the vendor folder, likely because it hasn't indexed its usages the way it would in my project. So if you can, good for you. Doesn't work for me, clearly. So I'm sure there's a setting. I'm just saying, like, I wish it was the default. Okay, let's see. Repository exists. Prepare the database. So repository exists. Retry 2 times. This migrator repository exists. Otherwise, handle missing database. If it's an instance of SQLite, then create the SQLite database. Otherwise, it's going to resolve the connection. This is pretty deep. And then it's going to attempt to be based on your driver name. It's going to attempt to do the right thing. Okay. There's actually a lot of code for this. So let's go look at migrate fresh. Is there a migrate fresh command? No. Fresh command. Nice. Okay, so migrate fresh. Let's just see if it has anything at all in here, and maybe we're just not hitting it, right? Okay, it does have repository exists. So it does have repository exists, but it doesn't do the if not exists, do the stuff, right? Dropping all tables, new line, call. Oh, that's interesting. It calls migrate. It calls migrate with database pass, and then it calls the seeder. Force is true here. So something higher up, this must be crapping out is what's going on. I think that's crapping out is what's going on. I bet you this repository exists if we dig deep enough down here. It returns a bool though. It doesn't say it throws. Let's see where it actually throws this. Database connections, bindings. We need like we would need the full stack trace, which is I think a little bit annoying to get at the command line. So let's do MFS. This explodes. Let's see if the log holds the whole thing. I don't think that it will. I don't think the command line stuff gets logged. Let's kill this. Nope, it does. Okay, cool. Let's see where it's claiming to die here. Fresh command 67. Okay. Fresh command, perfect. Okay, exactly where we thought. It's interesting though, because again, this doesn't claim to throw. It claims to, you know, get connection. It must be this is actually if we look around. I bet you it must be one of these other things. 185. Whoops, I'm all over the place. 185. Where was that? Repository exists. Drill down. So has table throws an exception. This throws an exception. Okay. So I'm just trying to think this through, actually looking. We may not need to do anything here. We may just need to be a little more resilient. We kind of just need to be a little more resilient in the fact that if it doesn't exist, just don't explode, right? Because migrate, notice that we call migrate and we force it. So it's kind of like if we knew that the database didn't exist, just don't worry about dropping all the tables. Just run it, right? So let's see if we can kind of backfill it that way. All right, so what we were saying, press Shift Command. What is this? Press, what is that? Alt Command F7? Screw that. All right, it's too many. It's like this on the keyboard. Ah! All right, trying to get back to the top here where we actually, trying to figure out how this is a little more graceful. So this calls prepare database. And it's got its own repository exists. Okay. And this retries 2 times. It wraps. I wonder why it retries 2 times. Handle missing database error. Okay. Attempt to create the database if it's missing. If it's not, okay. If it's an instance of that, if it's not, okay. Okay, I kind of see what they're doing here. They're basically trying to determine if the repository exists. And if it doesn't, they want to make sure that the exception being thrown was that it didn't exist, right? That's kind of what they're after here. So I think if we could borrow this repository exists in its current state, basically. We might need handle. And then we basically say, look, if repository doesn't exist, then just skip that part of it, right? I think that's what we could probably do here. Because again, we don't need to migrate install. If not repository exists, preparing the database, migrate install. Okay. Let's go back. Do we need to call install? All we want is migrate to prompt you, which it seems, if the repository doesn't exist, it's going to get in here and attempt to ask you to do that, it seems like, right? So if we go down here one more time, we already know what that does. It checks for the table. And then down here, it's going to say attempt to create it. If the option's force, which it is when we call it, it's just going to do it, which is fine, right? If you're, again, to ask you. If you're running migrate fresh seed, that might be a little heavy-handed, but we can work that out in the PR. Let's start copying over code. I think we have what we need here. Let's borrow the repository exists thing. Let's just bring this over to fresh. And basically what we're going to say is if the repository, yes, I know, just let me edit it. If the repository exists, then we're going to drop everything. Then we kind of need to know else if it doesn't exist, but can be created. That's kind of an interesting state. You kind of need to know, like, has repository. It's not, that's the same as repository exists. Let's just start writing this. I think it'll make more sense when we start writing it. Okay, so repository exists, retry 2 times. It's going to just delegate on, and then we need this now, right? Return handle missing database. Otherwise false, it doesn't exist. We're going to force you to create it. Here's the tricky part. The tricky part is handle missing database needs to return oh, do we want to pre-ask them? This is where we would have to decide. Yeah, what we need to do in here is determine, hey, was the exception thrown a creatable instance, right? Was the exception thrown something that could be created, right? So it has to be this, right? If it's this, then it's going to create it. If it's not that, then we return false. Otherwise, it's all of one of these and we create it. Otherwise, we return false. So it's kind of like if this method, we don't want to create it here per se, but if this method returned false, then whatever the exception was isn't something we're aware of, and we should probably just bubble it up. That's what I would think. Or, see, the problem is the force part. I don't like the force part, I think. This option, we just touch it. If the option no interaction, we return false. Otherwise, yeah. I'm trying to think, we need to think through this. I'm here in the chat. Maybe some people have opinions. Let's see here. Okay. Let's draft this out for a second. All right, you're running migrate fresh. You're running migrate fresh. And your expectation is that if the database isn't there, we're going to create it for you. The complication is we use force true. We use force true, or Laravel currently uses force true when it calls these underlying commands. So we have two options. We could just force true, because again, your intended behavior if you run migrate fresh is go ahead and make me the database. If the database exists, you're never going to run into any of these problems. If the database doesn't exist, we're going to attempt to forward it on and make it. What my concern is, I'm trying to voice my concern here in the right way. My concern is twofold. One, the concern is I don't want to overwrite any local database, right? Or any local to whatever environment you're on, right? I don't want to overwrite any database. Definitely don't want to do that. I don't think that's possible because repository exist would return true. But let me just draft out my issues. The other issue is I want to bubble up any other exception. So if there's some other, I don't know all the exceptions that can be thrown on repository exists. So if some other exception happened, I would kind of just want that to get rethrown. Otherwise, call down to the other stuff with call down to the other stuff with force true, because again, the expected or the intended or the smooth behavior is just to create whatever is missing, potentially with or without a prompt. That's kind of the next nuance, is like, should we prompt for creation? That's the nuance. We really need to answer this question. If we do prompt for creation, then what I can do is say, oh, if you don't have the database, then don't say force true for at least the migrate command, right? Allow it to ask you if it should make the database. So it's like else It's like else set force equals the false. And it's gonna go on and do its thing. I think that's probably what should happen. Yeah, you know what? It might be that easy. Let's just do this. If repository doesn't exist, it's going to say force false, which should push me into the path that I want, and just let migrate do its thing. Because you're really meaning to run migrate at that point. This is the way. It's simpler than I thought. Okay, so let's get rid of all that. I'm not going to override any database because it's going to say it doesn't exist, and I'm basically just going to delegate on to migrate. That's exactly how we want it to work. If you run migrate fresh and you've never migrated before, you're really just running migrate and then also db seed. So here you go. There it is. I think the handle missing database. We don't need to do any of this because we're not trying to handle it per se. We're just going to return false here. Or wait, no. Are we always returning false here? You're kind of like retry. Otherwise, you're just returning false. Can retry just take a value, or is it always a callback? When equals null. Callback, okay, when. What does it do with when? Go to, oh man, look at that. Oh, I love it. Oh, okay, when is a callable then. Okay, callable or null. All right. So basically, we don't need all this. We're kind of always returning false. We're just trying to see if the repository exists. I think automatically catching the error, yeah. So we go to if when and not that, then throw E, not when. Oh. We rethrow. Okay, so retry automatically rethrows. Retry automatically rethrows. I'm not sharing my thoughts that great today, sorry. Let's see here. If this has to return, yeah, otherwise we throw it. Callback attempts. See, I kind of would have expected it to this returns the callback on attempts if it was. So it's going to try to do this 2 times. If that fails, it's going to call when, right? And when, if it doesn't return true, it's going to end up rethrowing the exception that it caught. The original exception that it caught. That's my understanding of how this works. So retry itself returns t value, which I assume is this, or the value from the callback. Yeah, the value from the callback. True or false. But it gets an exception. The exception goes into when, and then this has to return true or false, which is why it's wrapped in its own try. Okay, that was a lot to unpack there. I knew about the retry command. I have never used it myself. I'm just trying to think if we need it. A simpler version of this. I don't understand why they're doing it 2 times, and I'm okay with it because again, they're going to pass this on. They're going to pass this on. and they were only calling it once before. So I'm not really breaking any code. So really what I want to do here is I want to try that. Okay. And if it throws an exception, then we really just want to say false. We really just want to wrap this so it doesn't throw the exception directly. And we would return false. It's the only place that it's used in this code. And it was only used once before anyway. So what I'm saying here is that before, this called the migrator repository exists directly one time. If that failed, it bubbled up the exception. In this case, if it fails, again, they might be retrying it twice for whatever reason, but it kind of doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters, to be honest. We would just try it, let it spin, eat the exception, and return false otherwise. So it's kind of silly. Anyway, the point is, we're calling it the same number of times. We're calling the migrate repository exists once. And if it doesn't exist, then we're going to pass it along. It's not this. This could call it again, and somehow it could exist. So we're calling it twice down here. That's kind of what I wanted to look at. Again, didn't articulate that well, but we probably ought to save this off. So I think what we want to do is we probably just want to save this off. I don't quite understand the repository exists. You could use retry and turn off reporting. Yeah. Okay, let's say exists equals to that. Let's pass in exists. I just want to be consistent in the number of times it's called. Again, when I make the actual PR, this might be a bit cleaner, but let's just make sure nowhere else repository exists is called. So it should just be called 3 times. It is. It's our own method. It's there, and then the one time where we're going to store its result and use it. Okay. A lot of back and forth here, like 30 minutes. But I think now if I run MFS, it should prompt me. That's my expectation. Nope. Okay, so where's it blowing up now? Let's go back to our logs. Eee. Oh, the logs are in here. Let's open up Laravel.log. Let's kill all this. I'm trying to figure out, is it still throwing it in the fresh command, or is it now in the migrate command? So fresh command 132. Okay, maybe we're not catching the way we should. Fresh command 132. Fresh command 132. Ah, okay. Am I crazy? Are we try catching this? What's going on here? Local error. What is migrator repository exists? Fresh command set. Okay, 665 is called. Yeah, I get it. That's interesting that we're getting, even though it's in a try. Oh, is it like, what's the other? Is it a different? Are we not getting here? Or is it like one of those things where it's like a PHP error? Aren't there like two levels, aren't they? I always thought error was underneath throwable. But maybe it's like a hardcore PHP error and like it, no, because the other one uses throwable, so it's not that. Are we here? No. PHP artist, maybe MFS isn't what I think. Migrate fresh. It's definitely not getting there. And what did it say it called it from? 65? Yeah, 65. Okay, so it's we're not in some other part of the code. For a second I thought we might be in some other part of the code. Weird. What does this actually throw? Local error database, stack trace, query exception. Yeah. Is query exception like not a throwable? Everything should be a throwable. Query exception. Extends PDO exception. Extends runtime exception. Extends exception, which is a throwable. Yeah, okay. One of those days where it's like, am I crazy? Why would that not catch? Repository exists. We go down here, we get the connection, we call has table runs something, and this explodes. I thought this was going to be like a 15-minute change. This is what you get for thinking, oh, I can do that in 15 minutes. You get in some weird place where you're like, am I a programmer? I don't even know anymore. Okay, prepare database. I'm just trying to see if they do anything different. They call repository exists. This is the whole retry dance where they call that. Is there some kind of like doubly crazy thing that's going on with retry? Temps back off. Yeah, that's fair. I am curious. Now it's making me think the retry is there for a reason. Or it's doing some kind of, yeah. Oh, this is this returning false? All right, well, first of all, let's bool that just for fun. Well, let's go up here then. So it's not throwing, that's not the thing throwing an exception. Something else is throwing an exception. Dump exists. All right, let's go back down here. Oh, that could be it. That could be it. It might not be matching that. That's an interesting PHP quirk. It might not be matching that. I know what you're saying, Adrian. Let's just see the dumps though real quick. Okay, finally it doesn't get out of there. Okay, yeah, so throwable. There we go. It was working all along. That's crazy. That's one of the, it's like when you do a git merge. Git merge is actually the only time you can kind of like sneak in a change without having a history around it. So you can actually get into the merge commit and you can make changes. And if you do that, it's actually not visible anywhere else other than, of course, the merge commit itself, which no one would ever really look at. So the point is, you're in like this purgatory land when you're try catching finally that it didn't pick up syntactically that like throwable wasn't a valid reference. Like if you would have said throwable anywhere else in the class, like it, and you hit that line, it would have said, oh, like I don't know what, throwable is, right? I don't know what Illuminate database console migration / throwable is. It would have assumed it was underneath the local namespace or the current namespace. So this was working all along. Let's get rid of all of our stupid little dumps because that's all we really needed it to do. Okay, so dump here, finally false. There we go. Okay, so if we go back here now, let me kill this. And let's say PHP artisan migrate fresh. This is actually asking us from the migrate command now, which is what we wanted. Perfect. Would you like to create it? I say no. It gives us an exception. Oh! The operation was canceled. The operation was canceled. So if now that you're being prompted and we're not forcing it to do something, we're going to need to stop because I bet you this is happening. I'm glad we hit no. I'm glad we hit no. If we go to Laravel log again, let's kill all this, run this again. We'll say no. I bet you it's trying to go to the next thing and now it's not happy about it. yeah, the migrate command. Migrate command 164, 164. Oh, that's interesting. Retry 1. PHP artisan migrate. Does that happen on migrate too? No. Oh, it happens on migrate as well. I didn't change that. That's actually how migrate works. That's weird. I would think, I would think if you said no, it should quit. Did it do that earlier? Thought it was a little more graceful than that earlier. Where were we? PHP artisan migrate. Operation canceled. Okay, yeah, no, I guess that's just how it works. That feels like another part of the PR. If you cancel that, if you cancel saying make the database, you shouldn't try to do anything else. Whatever. All this stuff's kind of rough. It's actually kind of rough when you get in here and look at it. Okay, anyway, I think we figured out how to do that. There's one more thing. There's one more thing I want to do. Let's do composer run dev. I don't think I've got npm on here. It might be doing it in the background though. Nope. Npm install. Yeah. Oh, come on. Are you gonna work or no? It looks like it got a weird node version. Okay, moving on to the other small little paper cut. And I may not hack on this since we're already spent longer on that than I thought, but we'll at least dig in here and see what it looks like. New, built-in exception page, very pretty, well-designed, but as an OG PHP developer, and maybe I'm missing this, so tell me in the chat. As an OG PHP developer, when I land here and I see like that and like the message of the exception, like we were just talking about, as we've seen a bunch in the first part of this stream, where's like my line number? Where's my like file and line number, right? I want to see like the file and line number, and clearly they have it down here. And I kind of get why they probably didn't put it up here, because it's not always correct, right? Or in this case, for example, it's going to say what it says down here, like, index line 20, right? Public index 20 is what it's going to say. And that's not really necessarily the correct line. But I guess what kind of, you got all these other stack trace frames and so forth, but like, I guess what kind of I would like to see, even if it's not prominent, like you got all this stuff up here, first like high level above the fold kind of stuff, right? But like the file and the line number is more or less below the fold, right? I mean, it's way down here in the corner. It's not prominent. Now I'm not saying you need to make it prominent, but like part of this exception message is the file name for a lot of exceptions. So like I would like to see just somewhere, for me, like even at the end of this, like lighter gray, smaller font, something, just like in PHP index line 20. Like I just want to see that. So that's just me. I look for it right away because again, I'm an OG. So yeah, anyway. Adrian, what's going on? Adrian, you're just dominating the chat, man. I still use the ignition error page because the Laravel one does not offer to open the file directly in my IDE. Is that true? Is that true, or do you have to set? I thought Liam, what's the guy's name? Liam, like Hamill or Ham? Anyway, Liam, he's been on the stream. He's been in the chat before, but Liam, I think, had a pretty good tweet the other day about setting this in your app editor. Let's just see what happens when I click. Oh, it opens and closes. Okay. Can you click this here? No. I thought it was clickable, but anyway, he had something where you could set in your config app file, your app config file, app editor, and he claimed this works. Now maybe he meant Ignition, but I don't remember seeing that in his tweet. He talked about the beautiful new Laravel page, so I assume it's configurable. Anyway, let's go dig up this page is the point. Let's go dig up this page. Don't know where it lives necessarily, but obviously it lives in Laravel somewhere. So let's just find a little hook. Let's find a little hook here and see if we can dig this up. Let's borrow this. Let's unmask the PHP too. Yeah, okay. Okay, exception message. All right, app version, PHP version, unhandled. Okay, exception renderer. All right, let's get on down here. So you got the status code, the full URL. I mean, clearly somewhere in here, Laravel exceptions renderer, icon copy check. What is this? Copy to clipboard, badge, method. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, badge, alerts, icons. Where's the rest of the stuff? Oh, here's the header. Okay, the header of it. There's more. File with line. Here you go. Where is this? Yeah, see, you got config app editor. There you go. I think that might be your answer. I think, Adrian, if you make this, we can go do it real quick. But I think if you make that config, then it's gonna attempt to open it up. Let's try it. I don't even know if this is on the page though, unfortunately. Data tippy content. PHP file line. Merge class. Well, anyway, let's just go see what's clickable when we say like editor PHP Storm. Database file path. What? I don't even know what's clickable here. That's gonna open and close. Where else can we click? Oh, there you go. Hey, there you go. So now, a minute ago when I clicked that, it just expanded. It just closed and expanded, but now it actually is jumping to PHP Storm. So yeah, it works. Don't thank me, thank Liam for that one. I would not have known that one on my own. So he tweeted it the other day, so go give him a retweet or something. But anyway, the point is, I don't think I'm gonna stream this part, but like, the point is I would like to see at a higher level this information and a clickable link, right? I would like to see that. So, you know, it's listed over here. I'd really just love to see it right here too. Again, just like in PHP, just like in looking at the logs, it's not necessarily going to give you the exact file and line number, but when I first came across this page a couple versions ago, I definitely at first was like, where do, you know, that's cool that they show it all here, but I just, my OG PHP exception scanner brain just always kind of looks for file and line number at the end of this message, just as I would, you know, in the log file, right? The very first thing I look at is like this part. And again, it's not always, you know, that at la 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 line 60. It's not always the right one per se, but it's kind of what I expect to see. So I bet you if we go, or well, that's not it. Oh my goodness. Let's kill all this and refresh the page. This should come out. And so does this say, yeah, see, this says SQLite connector 60. So they're doing a little bit of work. They're doing some work to give you this instead of the vendor frame. Entry point, server. The only thing I'm trying to figure out is which one's the one we care about, right? Ensure it has an absolute path. Except, here's the exception object. SQLite database doesn't exist. Okay, so they chunk all of this out. and they get you that, which is SQLite connector 60. Where is SQLite connector 60? See, to me, that's what you see in the logs. I don't even see SQLite connector 60 here. SQLite connect, is that right? Yeah. So do they just eat the very first one? It's not even on this page. Strange. Okay, is the next one on the page? No, SQLite connector 19. So what are they doing? Where do they even start? Is it this one? Nope. Huh, it's strange. I'm wondering like where they start. I know Sentry does stuff like this. Like if you get into Sentry, they eat certain parts of the stack trace in an attempt to give you a better one. So I think that's why this is actually going to end up taking a bit longer than I have time on the stream today. So I think my goal will be to familiarize myself a little bit with kind of their hierarchy of the stack trace, if you will. Like how are they determining index? And like when would we want to show you a different one? And I think I might also see if this is even worthwhile. Make sure like it hasn't been attempted or already removed or something. But I don't see the harm in like a line right here that says, you know, in clickable :20, right? I would just want to see this like right here or at the end of this and like a very, you know, muted subtext. What's the harm in that, right? And in most, I would think not this one, but in most exceptions, that's going to give you, you know, very quick clickability. I just don't want to scroll. I feel like that's such a dominant piece of the error message. It's probably the most important piece of the error message, and it's down here, you know? And again, they're determining this somehow, so I'm going to have to like dig into the stack trace and the code and see like how they're determining that, because, you know, I don't think this one has a lot of value in this case. They're packing this down to the whatever's your app and not vendor, so that's probably all they're really doing here. But I'm going to get a different exception than this. It's one that feels a little better in the code. Let's just see. What if I do something like that? There you go. Okay, so syntax error, expecting this. There we go. I want to be clickable. I want to be clickable. Right here, I want to be clickable to that. Right up here. No scrolling. Parse error. Inline whatever, 45. Click. I don't want to go down here and click that. Right? I want to click that. And that one's always like, to me, I think that one's always overridden where it clicks into some kind of editor. So yeah, anyway, this is a better example. When you're hacking along and your database is up and you don't have like these really fundamental problems, you're going to have a solid line number and file. I want to see it up top here. That's where I am. So I'm gonna attempt to make that happen in next week's stream. First, I'm gonna get familiar and maybe see what Taylor thinks about it, so I don't go completely rogue. All right, thanks everybody for joining live on this meandering thing. I will make the PR for that migrate thing. I might just spend a little time to make migrate not regurgitate the exception, because I feel like that's also a poor DX. Like I feel like if I say no, it should just bail out with a message of like, hey, go make your database first before you can run migrate, right? So anyway, sounds good. See you all next week.